Thank you for tuning in to the Astrological Commission podcast. This is your host, Issachar Bey, and I'm here with who I call the Master Astrologer, Miss Kathy Rose. She's an extraordinary astrologer, and we wanted to give her her flowers and also, celebrate her and the contribution that she has made to the astrological community. She has made a great impact. I've had a personal reading from her in the past. Also, studied and learned a lot of her teachings, read a lot of her articles. She has many different things going on. She does a podcast on YouTube. She teaches, she lectures. She is somebody who's definitely one of the people who I say is on the forefront of definitely expanding and definitely pushing astrology forward. And so, Kathy, we want to thank you for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Well, what a very nice introduction. Thank you for that. I'm happy to be here.
Kathy, for those people who are listening who don't know who you are, could you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your introduction into astrology?
Yeah, I have an interesting story. I actually grew up in a household that was not oriented at all to astrology, but I began to have an interest at 8 years old, and it was just a pervasive curiosity, and I had to pester my mother over and over again to get me a book or something that I could read about astrology. And finally, she got so tired of me bugging her, she got me Linda Goodman's Sun Sign. And so I vividly recall sitting on the front steps of our house and reading that book and reading it and sort of remembering it. And I recall going inside and saying to my mother, this is the weirdest thing. I'm reading these pages, but it's like I already remember the information. And she said, go outside and play. Go away, She didn't understand that. So that began my study of astrology. I began to devour books, and I was highly interested, 4th, 5th, 6th grade and on. And it was mostly self-study at that time. And it continued pervasive self-study, reading every book I could get my hands on, doing charts by hand, calculating them before software came out. And until I launched my practice in 1983 when I was 24 years old, and I've been making my living from astrology ever since then in private practice.
And so once you started reading the books and really getting into astrology, who were some of your teachers, or who were some of the books that you really can identify as really being the milestones or really the foundations of your astrological knowledge and also information?
Mm-hmm. Well, I devoured as much as I possibly could at that point. Grant Louis, of course, Alan Leo, Alan Oken. Later, I really very much resonated with Stephen Arroyo, and Jeffrey Wolf Green, anybody I could get my hands on at that time. And then, of course, I stumbled onto Noel Till and studied deeply with him. And it was really when I connected with Noel. Of course, I'd already been in practice for a long time. But when I connected with him, it just went further. There was a polishing. There was a depth that took place at that point. And Noel and I had a really good connection, and I became his assistant very quickly, his teaching assistant. And that launched everything in an accelerated form at that point. And
so at this point, now that you're connected with Noel Till, how was that interaction? Because Noel Till to me is probably one of the greatest astrologers to ever walk the face of the earth. His story is phenomenal. If you haven't heard it, she may give us a little bit about it. But here's this opera singer who went to Harvard, who his story is phenomenal. And then when he gets into astrology, he creates his own lane. Nobody was doing the kind of astrology or teaching the things, the different kinds of astrology or the levels of astrology like Noel Till, from the psychological field, even to I have a lot of his teachings and a lot of his courses. I have all of his books. So while I'm sitting here now, I actually was just looking at his book, The Vocation, the Midheaven Extension Process. I mean, the guy, he was ahead of his time. He was absolutely phenomenal. So how was that relationship, meeting Noel Till, then becoming his assistant, and then kind of implementing his teaching, his systematic way of astrology into the Stephen Arroyos and all the different other things that you already had incorporated previous to that?
Well, I had already been very much oriented to modern astrology from a psychological and therapeutic viewpoint since I started my practice. So that was my natural orientation anyway, always applying the psychological and therapeutic approach to astrology. So I already had that base, and I had read a lot of Dane Rudhyar's work, who built on that base also. I love Dane Rudhyar. So when I met Noel, it was some nuanced techniques, some brushstroke techniques that he pioneered that made all the difference in the world, and his very structured approach. And it was amazing because it just helped me organize my thoughts a little bit better when I started working with him. And our connection was good. I met him when he was older, later in life, and his ego was a little bit toned down at that point. His wisdom had developed, and that was a great thing. And he offered a lot of opportunities for me. So it just helped me take the therapeutic psychological approach to the next level. I'm very grateful for that connection. And, at some point when Noel was aging, I felt it very, very important to get his legacy recorded on video. So it took me 2 or 3 years of bugging him, saying, I want to do a video series of your work to capture your legacy. As it turns out, I was really tuned in because he ended up getting Lewy body dementia, and that's what he passed away. So I was trying to do this while his faculties were still intact, and that was back in 2010 and 11 and 12. So I had to continue to bug him to get this video series created, and so we have 9 videos of Noel teaching, which is great because most of his books are out of print now, which is a real shame. But this Till Masterwork series of videos still lives on, and then people get to actually experience him, not just read him, but experience his personality.
That is absolutely amazing. I think that for you to have kept that going, I just think that that's unbelievable, because just his great work, his legacy, to keep that going is absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, he was probably one of the best to ever do it. What was some of your favorite, I would say, the most favorite thing about his teaching or his legacy? I would say personally for me, it's so much that I've learned. I mean, the hemispheric differences, definitely the midpoint structures, the solar arcs, but just the way you look at the chart, one of the thing I incorporate a lot of what I teach. Like, for instance, I tell people all the time, your moon is your most dominant need in the chart. And, of course, that's Noel Till, right? I also talk about, the Saturn return, or when the Lord of the ninth house is under developmental tension, it could be an indication that the person's education was disrupted. I learned all of this stuff from the great Noel too. So it's amazing to have, I know for you, to have been so close to him and learn from him. Or what are some of the best things that you've learned from him?
One of the concepts that I learned that I was already in tune with is the matter of simplicity, simplifying the measurements, releasing the attachment to needing a massive pile of measurements, which is what modern astrologers now, not people who use modern astrology, but current astrologers are very much oriented to too many measurements because we have computers. And because we can calculate everything by a computer, we wind up with just thousands of measurements in front of us, and then most people get lost. Noel's assertion was to simplify, understand which measurements are loudest and most important, and take the astrological machete and cut out the extraneous measurements that are not needed, which means then you can get to the point very quickly. One of the things he taught was to get to the point where you can prepare for a client in 45 minutes or less, including typing in the information, printing out the charts, doing the calculations to get ready for consultation. I was already doing that because I tend to be very speedy in these sorts of things, but that demand of simplification was first and foremost, most important. Aside from that, it was things like you mentioned, hemisphere emphasis, other things so that he pioneered and that I'm getting ready to do a big webinar for with Astrology University is about the Aries point, understanding that when you see in a horoscope planets or angles at the Aries point, and the Aries point starts at 29-degree mutable and goes through 1-degree cardinal, understanding what that offers. It offers natural high visibility or public projection as part of the life purpose. So what I did, which was a little different than what Noel taught, was I added in the concept of life purpose being shown in the horoscope. So when I look at a natal chart, I'm not thinking to myself, this is who they are because this is their chart. I think this is what they are polishing. This is what they are incarnating to develop or heal or resolve based on the patterns in the chart. So when somebody incarnates with a chart that has planets or angles at the Aries point, it tends to suggest that that soul is here to understand how to handle public visibility. And it doesn't mean they will become famous. They may take it at a smaller level. They may not activate it at all. But there is something about learning how to handle visibility that is going to be strong for that soul who has planets or angles at the Aries point. And this is innovative and incredible. And then you can take that to the next level, which is when planets move to the Aries point by solar arc, there is a special bloom. I wrote an article about that. It was in the Mountain Astrologer once called the Aries point bloom. So that nuanced technique, that brushstroke, is phenomenally important. And then he also advanced a brushstroke technique about unaspected planets. Now, in his books, Noel called them peregrine planets. But peregrine was a term already used by the traditional classical astrologers and with different contexts. So it's fair to say, instead of calling them peregrine planets, I call them what they really are, which are unaspected planets, meaning what Noel brought forward were planets not aspected by Ptolemaic aspect, planet to planet, not planet to angle, or planets receiving no aspects. And of course, this is absolutely dependent on the orb that you choose. If your orbs are too wide, you're never going to see it. If your orbs are too small, you're going to see it constantly. So finding orbs that are reasonable, but unaspected planets make the planet stronger and louder in the life purpose context. That planet's going to make a lot of noise. So that's another one of the brushstroke techniques that he brought forward. And there's a whole lot more, but these simple concepts that say so much about the life purpose, that say so much about what we are here to learn and polish and resolve, come from some of those pioneering techniques that he brought forward. And I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I think that, so, you know, tell us a little bit about I actually ordered it. It was a copy of CDs where Noel Chill kind of went through all of his processes or all of his, his philosophies of astrology. They had, it was certain CDs. It was a box of CDs of DVDs. And I actually purchased it. I have them here. And I just think it was absolutely phenomenal. Are you still offering those DVDs?
Yeah, but let's be clear. Now they're not DVDs anymore.
It's digital.
Yeah, it's digital downloads of the videos. Yes, we are still offering them. tillmasterwork.com. There are 9 total. And it's really quite something because Noel was a performer. He was very charming. He had that structure in his chart. He had moon opposite Venus, and, that's somebody who can be very charming. He had a very strong Leo moon in the 3rd house, so he was very dynamic, and he had the operatic voice. But when you combine his brain power and his ability to speak and his ability to perform, you get a very powerful speaker, which is why he was so effective. But you get to experience that in those videos, the command, the wisdom, the charm, and the nuance, and the incredible information. Yeah, so we are still offering them, and they're very reasonably priced for the amount of information you get.
Oh, definitely. I think that it's absolutely phenomenal. So just very quickly before we leave Noah Till, tell us about his school, and if anybody wants to join his school and learn or get access to his teachings and so forth, how can they do that?
Well, Noel had developed a master's correspondence course, which was very arduous. It was like getting a master's degree because minimum time it took to complete the course was 2 years. It was a lot of writing, and it was a tough course. And he did turn that over when he started to become ill. He turned it over to me and also to Basil Farrington. And I am finding that the course needs updating, and that the old way that the course was done needs to be updated into video segments and video teaching. So I'm in the middle of redoing his course, keeping the basic information, enhancing it with some of the techniques that I've developed and pioneered, and making it into a course that will be available. And hopefully it's going to be done by the end of this year or early next year. In the meantime, I'm teaching much of what I learned from him through Kepler College and also Astrology University. So I have courses with both of those big astrology organizations or colleges, higher level education. And I teach solar arcs through Astrology University. And then I teach the art of forecasting through Kepler. And interestingly enough, teaching the art of forecasting, the prediction practicum through Kepler, the most important part of that to me is the focus on ethics in the art of forecasting. And that was something that was very important to Noel also, that, you must talk to the client to understand how they are living their chart before you make an evaluation. And you can't automatically predict what is going to happen in a person's life because The chart is really focused on the inner development of the person. So when we see these gigantic cycles coming up for a person, whether it's a solar arc or a transit, first and foremost, you think of what is being developed internally. What are you healing or developing in your wisdom or in your ability to live life? And then secondary, you consider what might manifest as an event or in life circumstances, but you don't do the reverse. You don't look at these cycles and immediately think, okay, this planetary cycle will cause this event to happen, because that's giving all the power to the planets. I do the reverse. I think this planetary cycle is bombarding this person with this kind of energy which could trigger this type of growth, which then may bring about events corresponding to that type of growth. So it's important. It's part of my kind of soapbox platform to teach in that way, to understand there is an element of free will and choice as to what you do with these cycles that happen. The cycles don't make things happen. People make things happen. So I am teaching his material in those two big courses. And I look forward to when I get his course redone and vamped up and refreshed so that it will be offered on my website.
Yeah, that's going to be absolutely phenomenal. One of the things that I just love about his philosophy is just the way that he allows you to think about the chart. He allows you to see it from a different perspective, and you're able. If I've always said, the more readings you do, the more even all the stuff he talks about in synthesis and counseling. A lot of things that you see, it's almost like, wow, this guy was really on point. He knew what he was talking about. When you see things, when you talk to the client, if I had a client and I said, by the way, could I ask you a question? By any chance, was your father in your life? Did he leave at an early age? And they say yes, and the chart will suggest by having Saturn retrograde. So it's just dynamic, the things that he was able to observe and learn, the wisdom that he had, and so I just think that it was absolutely phenomenal. What I wanted to talk about next is, well, we can stay right here on prediction, because usually I ask every astrologer, when you're doing prediction, what is your favorite tool to use, or what is the tool that you find to be most accurate when you are in prediction?
Well, first, let me say that I shy away from the word prediction personally. And part of that is because... forecasting. Yeah. Well, but it's an important... I'm glad that you said the word prediction so that I could talk about this, because not all people agree with this. There are many astrologers, I see them a lot on Twitter, who will say, if you don't predict, you're not an astrologer. If you don't predict, you're no good. But following that line of thought, predictions that they make are absolute, not taking into account how a person is living their life or the level of manifestation that they may choose with that particular cycle. So I shy very much away from absolute predictions, because I think that's putting a person in prison, so to speak. And I have been the recipient of some very negative predictions by some very famous astrologers in my early years, back when I used to have consultations done so that I could see how they conducted their consultation. And in a few cases, some very high ego famous astrologers pronounced some very authoritative predictions for my life that were limiting and negative and did not happen. Unfortunately, I'm enough of a maverick and enough of a rebel that if somebody tells me for example, you will never be married and you will never have children. And that happened, somebody said that to me in my 20s. And I said, get out of here. And he said, I mean, basically it was not very friendly for the rest of that conversation because I dared to question the astrologer. But he said, no, it's in your chart, young lady. And if you can't see that, you need to study more. And I chose not to believe that. I chose to say, man, that doesn't feel right to me, and nobody's going to tell me what I can and cannot have in life because of my chart. My chart is not a prison. I'm not a slave to the horoscope. And I'm married. In fact, just yesterday was my 35th wedding anniversary with my wonderful husband, and we have two great
wow.
kids.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah, so, fortunately, though, I never let that authoritative prediction stick. However, I have had many, many, many clients who have had those kinds of predictions from very authoritative, high-ego astrologers who feel the need to take control of people's lives. I've had clients come to me and say, I had an astrologer tell me I was going to die when I was 52, and here I am 49, and I'm terrified. Had other astrologers or other clients mention many, many other kinds of authoritative predictions like that have scared them, that have been lodged in the back of their mind, that they've been walking around feeling like sort of a prediction ticking time bomb waiting to go off. It's very unfortunate. I think that is an abuse, personally. I think that's an abuse of astrology. But on the same token, when people go to see astrologers, I hope that they know themselves well enough and have enough of their own confidence to not absorb and immediately believe everything an astrologer says. And I say that making my living being a consulting astrologer. I always tell the clients, this has to fit for you. And run that through your own consciousness, and you get to choose. So when I forecast, I'm using transits and solar arcs. Those are my favorite techniques. And when I do a client consultation, I arc the planets forward for about 9 to 10 years in the future, and I'm looking for gulps of time that suggest to me when development is going to accelerate, so that I can talk to the client and say, 5 years from now, it looks like there's a major reward period that starts because of what you're doing now. The seeds that you are planting now looks like 5 years from now may really pay off. So what do you project for yourself? So those kinds of time frames I think are important to see in the future and tell the client you've got great energy or strong energy or this kind of development scheduled to happen in your life at these times. But that's very different than saying you will be divorced in a year. And by the way, that was another prediction I received from an astrologer who I was married. I had, my 2 children were little bitty, who pronounced, you will be divorced in a year. And I said, no, I won't. And he proceeded to berate me and insult me. And he said, again, similar to what the other astrologer said, okay, Missy, you must not have studied astrology after all. You must be completely unaware if you can't see this in your chart. And I said, I know exactly what you're talking about in my chart, but it's not going to manifest in divorce. And it did not. So these are important topics for me because there is another way to conduct a consultation that is ethically sound, that honors the client, and that understands we are more than just our chart. Our chart is the imprint we receive from the planets at the moment of birth. But we are not our chart. We are a soul that happens to have a chart for this lifetime, suggesting the kind of growth and development we are going through. So to limit ourselves to our chart just does not feel happy to me.
I think that it's very important as astrologers. One of the things that I take since I've been, when I'm getting ready to really come out into my personal practice up front. I've been doing readings for a while, but I've been kind of like not really publicizing. I've been kind of behind the scenes a little bit. But coming out, one of the things that I take very, like you said, ethical, is that, one of the things that I've also learned from Noel Till is that when you're doing the reading or the consultation, you never want to talk astrologies. You never want to say, oh, I see your Saturn is coming to your moon. They don't know what that means. So, I think that it's very, as an astrologer, we have the responsibility to be, like you said, ethical and moral, and that we're not telling people what they want to hear. We're not trying to, give them falsified information, but that we are there to help them through this incarnation, to help them with whatever they're going through or whatever's going on at hand. And we're able to decode the astrological symbolisms and give them a little bit more insight on what's going on in this season, in this period of their life. So I think that it's very, very, like, for instance, one of the things that cringes me is when I see people on social media on talking about somebody and they're pulling up an astrological chart and they're saying all of this stuff only to find out that they don't even have the birth time. So, like, you're falsifying all this information. You have all these people watching you, and the information that you have or that you're telling them, you could not possibly be getting without being able to know the time, because the midheaven, the moon, and the ascendant are not even correct. So I just think that it's people like you, who are standing up for the ethics, for the morality of astrology, to definitely stand with that, and I think that's awesome. Tell us a little bit about this great podcast that you have going on. When did it start? Who's doing it with you, and when can we look forward to new episodes?
Mm-hmm. My podcast is called The Maverick Podcast, and I was guided to do that because I resonate with the Maverick personality, because that is who I am. And I talk about maverick people being people who think outside the box, who are very independent, need to have adventure and change, and need to work solo quite frequently, need to do things where somebody is not breathing down their neck, needs to have the freedom to pioneer new paths and do new things. That's the maverick. And mavericks you can frequently see that in a horoscope by having a very, very strong Uranus signature, whether Uranus is oriental or unaspected or on an angle, or configured with a sun-moon midpoint or in an aspect structure. The Uranus signal frequently is connected to the maverick. So I started this, a few years ago. I don't even remember when. And I interview people who are resonating with maverick energy, people who are free spirits, independent thinkers, think outside the box. My most recent episode that just was published yesterday was with actress Jane Lynch, because she is a maverick and she's been a client and she's also studied astrology. So we had a really good conversation. You can find my Maverick podcast. You can find it on my YouTube channel, which is Rose Astrology. And that's going to be the YouTube version of it, but it also comes out audio only if a person doesn't want the visuals. But talking with Jane was great fun, because here you have this big-time, incredible, talented actress who also is very deep, very spiritual, and quite knowledgeable about astrology. So we had a good conversation. But I talked to people who dare to ask questions. One of the things mavericks do is they question tradition. Not that all traditions are bad, but they question the narrative. They question why is it done this way? Could it be done a different way, as opposed to just automatically obeying or automatically absorbing it? You know, mavericks tend to question, and because they are more prone to needing to think for themselves rather than just absorb whatever is being taught in order to fit in. So that's where I'm going with my Maverick podcast. I have some other great guests down the road that I don't want to reveal yet at this point. But it was great fun talking to Jane Lynch. That was a highly enjoyable episode.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a great podcast. I think that definitely we're going to give out of all of your social media and your website and where people can find you. Now, one of the things that is phenomenal to me is sometimes I'll be strolling through Facebook and I'll see this wonderful art that just grabs me. Mm-hmm. And I say, oh, my God, what is this? And then I look up and see, oh, man, Kathy Rose did this. Tell us about the art. How did it start? And, oh, my God, what is your influence? Because I think some of the art pieces you do are phenomenal.
Well, some of the art pieces that you're going to see are ones that I did all by myself, and some of them were with an art partner friend I have named Liza. But I began really producing art when I had a Neptune solar arc and a Neptune transit. And this was back in, 2006, 7, or 8, something like that. In fact, I wrote an article about it, which is on my website. It was published by the Mountain Astrologer, called Navigating the Neptune Fog. And that Neptune transit and solar arc came in, and it opened me up to higher levels of creativity that began to pour through me. I had never had any art training at all. Never thought I could ever produce a piece of art. And all of a sudden, the influence of Neptune started pouring through me, and I realized I had to create. I had to create. I had no choice. And at that point, I sat down and started making particularly mandalas. I love making mandalas, symmetrical forms of art that act as portals. They're very intelligent art pieces. And I did that along with astrology for about 12 years. I sold a lot. I went, my art was in art shows. I produced art and did astrological consultations. It was a very busy period of life for a long time. Now I have disassembled my art studio and all my supplies, so I'm not doing much art anymore. I really miss it. But I'm so busy with astrology. I'm doing astrological consultations and classes 6 to 7 days a week, that there's no time right now for me to engage in art. But it was a great period, and it was a way for me, when I would do art, to inflow creative energies that would allow my mind to come up with new astrological theories, actually. So in that way, it was wonderful.
Yeah, the art is absolutely phenomenal. Definitely, I think that it's great and it's amazing. You had that during the Neptune transit. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. And it's amazing. The art, and it grabs you.
Thank you. And let me say something about Neptune regarding this, that since we're on this topic real quick. What a lot of people do these days is they will look up their own cycles. They will look up a transit, and then they will go to Google, and they will put in something like, what is Neptune going to do to me? What will happen because of this cycle? Whether it's Neptune or Pluto or whatever it happens to be. If you do that for Neptune, you're going to see a bunch of negative posts. And the average person who hasn't really deeply studied astrology is going to have very limiting information implanted in their brain if they believe it. So I have a lot of people on social media and clients who come to me who immediately think Neptune means confusion, wipeout, deception, and all other bad things that you can imagine. And for me, it was not. For me, it was beautiful and amazing and opened up a whole new aspect of my life, which is why I continue to try to teach people to understand every single cycle that happens, a Pluto transit or arc, a Saturn transit or arc, has positive potential as well as the shadow potential. It's not always horrible, but what plays on Google searches or social media marketing will be the bad stuff, because that's how marketing works. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate when people know just enough astrology to be dangerous. They're really being dangerous with themselves because they're believing in only the negative, and then it's the self-fulfilling prophecy. Be mindful what you tell yourself, because you get to be right. So anyway, you brought up Neptune, and I wanted to say there is always a positive potential for any cycle that is going on in your chart.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, it's just an amazing to me, your history, your one of my favorite articles of yours is the one about pregnancy. Those of you that, if you go to her website, she talks about the astrology of pregnancy, and I just think that it's phenomenal just to see her approach and her ideology of how she thinks. When I look at certain astrologers, I love to see how they approach topics, how they approach the dynamics of different situations and circumstances, and I love the way that you do that. Been following you for a long time. I'm definitely, once you get the Noel Tools stuff updated, I definitely want to be one of the ones who gets a part of that. I think that his philosophy, his teachings has been phenomenal, and I think you should be commended and awarded and recognized because of your ability to maintain his legacy and keep it going. And I just, I hate to hear that some of his books are out of print, because he has some phenomenal books. It was just phenomenal. Tell us a little bit about what's upcoming for you. Before we get into that, let me just ask you this one question. We're in 2024. Is there anything that is on your radar that you're looking at, that you're concerned about? I know we have this eclipse on August the 8th. What are some of the things right away? This is an election year that's on your target or your radar.
Well, I did a 2024 forecast, a video forecast, with my good friend Pam Gregory. So we teamed up and we did a forecast, and it's on YouTube. And we covered month to month the energies for this year on a global world level, but also on a personal level. And certainly one of the things we focused on is the fact that April is probably one of the most impactful months of the entire year because of the big eclipse coming up and other things, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction and so forth. So a lot of the information for the year can be found on my YouTube video about that. And that's free. There's no advertising on my YouTube channel. I don't monetize any of my videos. They're just free. So this is an interesting year where I think humanity is changing phase, because especially next year when we have the big planets, Saturn and Neptune changing sign, Uranus changing sign, we are in a phase change, and we are in the beginning of that phase now, and it's a little uncomfortable. It's a little unstable, and we feel that we're moving from one phase to another, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot up in the air. But I believe in humanity, and I believe in the direction we're going, and I think it's all going to work out and be good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to look forward to. It's a lot, going on, but astrologically, it's very exciting, to see some of the things that will take place. And I think I've always said this, we as astrologers, we kind of have a cheat code, because we can kind of read the mind of God, so to speak. We can kind of decode the language of the heavens, and we can kind of be in, kind of get a glimpse of what's to come, or have an inclination of what's to come. And I think that it gives us that great ability. I feel like it makes us that's almost like us having our superpowers, is our ability to see and to observe some of the things that will be taking place. Tell us a little bit about what you have upcoming, any lectures, any talks. Have you published a book as of yet, or you have one on the way?
Oh gosh, I have 5 books in my head. I'm just looking to the time to actually write them, because I see so many clients per day, every single day. So when I'm not seeing clients, I'm teaching. But yeah, I have books, but they're still in my head. My schedule for the rest of the year is actually quite packed. Coming up in April, on April 6th, I'll be doing that webinar with Astrology University on the Aries point. I look forward to that. And then I have some work I'm going to be doing with the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which is the Edgar Cayce headquarters here in Virginia Beach. So I do a lot of work with Edgar Cayce Group, and I'll be lecturing for them in April, and then I'll be teaching astrology for them in a big conference in September. Also, though, if anybody wants to learn more about solar arcs, the course I offer through Astrology University is deep and comprehensive, and that's available anytime because it's a video course. So they can go to Astrology University, and they can, even if they're not part of that university for the 4-year program, they can take that module, the Solar Arcs class. And then for Kepler College, I'm still teaching that prediction practicum, the art of forecasting. That the next time that is going to be taught is in the fall. That's taught twice a year. And so I have a pretty packed schedule this year. And currently right now, I'm booked out for about 3 months in advance for my consultations. So there's that too. And then putting out more podcasts. It's just like astrology 24/7 for me.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal. To be able that astrology is also what keeps you going and allows you to make a living. I think that's phenomenal. Yeah, I just think that to be able to have that ability to be, pulled upon and be one of on the forefront, as I said. I would definitely recommend anybody listening to definitely schedule a consultation with her. Even if you have to wait 3 months, it's worth it. I've had a consultation with her in the past. It's absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, she's a student of Noel Till. So I believe she's the closest thing we have to him. So I would definitely recommend that you definitely get a consultation. And so we want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be on to share with us today. And we want you to know that we want to give you your flowers. We want to celebrate you. We want to recognize you as somebody who has been a great impact to the astrological community. I don't know if anybody's telling you that or you're receiving any accolades or awards, but we want to let you know that you are being seen, you're being heard, and your contribution has been received. And we definitely celebrate you because you have made a great impact in this astrological community. And we just wanted to recognize you and tell you job well done.
Well, that is one of the nicest things anybody's said to me. So thank you very much. And you're a very kind interviewer, and I appreciate that. And you're doing good work, too.
Thanks
for having me on. I appreciate this.
All right. So just before we go, I'd like to say this one thing. Go ahead and give us all of your websites, your links. Where can we find you? Where can we join your email list? All of those great things.
I'm pretty easy to find. My website is roseastrology.com. And on my website, I have most of my videos, but my YouTube channel is the same thing, Rose Astrology. So it's easy to remember. My YouTube channel is pretty active. I put out 1 or 2 forecasts per month, plus the Maverick podcast, usually monthly. So that's the easiest way to find me, and on my website is my email address, which is the best way to get in contact if you want to schedule a consult.
All right. Well, we want to thank Ms. Kathy Rose for tuning into our podcast today. We want to thank you also. We would like to say this one thing. Your destiny is not a matter of chance, but it's a matter of choice. And we love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.